Good evening, everybody. Welcome to CW Live. A really special session with us tonight. The post office strike ballot we're on the imminent. We're on the brink of it. It's ready to go, and we're here to talk to you as members in the post office and wider union members about that tonight. Delighted to have with me Andy Fury, National Officer of Post Office Members. Evening, Andy.
Evening, everybody. Evening, Chris.
Thank you, mate. So this session, you're going to hear a lot from Andy. He's going to be here to take your questions. We're also going to get an opening statement from Andy, but Andy's been keen to infuse on me. This is about you as members having the opportunity, both live and those of you who are joining us later, to have the opportunity on catch up to see what the big issues are, why we're balloting you, why it's so important you vote, why it's so important you vote yes, and just what is at stake in this dispute. So there's some of the things we're really going to be getting underneath. We want you to give us your feedback. We can already see over 300 of you are online, which is fantastic. Please spread the word. Tag your colleagues that work in it. Let's get the message out there as far and wide as we possibly can. So I'm just going to hand over to Andy. Before I do, please let us know who your name is, where you're watching from, and that you're behind this dispute, because that's absolutely crucial. And also start to get your questions in, because Andy's ready to answer as many of them as he possibly can in the next hour or so. So whilst you get your thinking caps on, I'm going to hand over to Andy Fury, National Officer. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, everybody. And firstly, thanks, Chris, for organising this session. And thank you for everybody who's joined so far. Firstly, I'd like to send fraternal greetings from Terry Pullinger, our Deputy General Secretary, and the Post Executive, who fully support this dispute, the need to vote yes. And of course, Dave Ward, our General Secretary, who is very keen that we ensure we deliver a massive yes vote and get the post office back round the bargaining table. So that really is the purpose of balloting. We need a massive, enormous yes vote. We need a great turnout, and we need to really shake the post office to its core and get them to realise they've made a fundamental mistake here in being so disrespectful towards our hard-working members. And we mustn't lose sight of the fact that all of our members, irrespective of what job they do in the post office, they worked throughout the pandemic. They provided wonderful service to the customer, to the public, kept the show on the road, kept post offices open across the nation throughout all of the lockdowns, went to work despite the fears and the concerns to their health and the health of their families. Basically, they did a magnificent job that connected this country with the post office and Royal Mail and Parcel Force. The thanks for that from the post office is a pay freeze, which is nothing more than a kick in the teeth. And the reality is they can afford to find the money to give us a decent pay rise. That is an absolute fact. £5 million doesn't sound like a lot of money across nearly 2,000 people. £5 million would give each of our members a decent pay rise from the 1st of April last year, which would benefit you going forward within today's difficult times with rising inflation, but it will also benefit you in the longer term with a better pension. So we're not talking about monies that would be impossible for the post office to find. It's a small sum of money, particularly when you consider the tens of millions of pounds that's been squandered on legal fees to defend the indefensible in the Horizon trials. Very keen to hear people's points of views and questions, but just to report, and I'll finish on this point, all the feedback from our members is that we are going to get a good yes vote. Our reps have indicated that the members are angry and frustrated with the way they're being treated by the post office. That said, we can't be complacent about this. We can't think that other people will vote yes and therefore you don't need to vote yes. We need absolutely everybody to return their ballot paper and vote yes. We need to do that for legal reasons, but we also need to do it on the basis the bigger the yes vote, the more it will make the post office realise the errors of their ways and bring them back to the negotiating table to bargain. We want a deal. We want an agreement. We don't want to take strike action unless we absolutely have to. But the way to ensure that we don't have to take strike action is to vote yes so that we can get them back around the negotiating table. Thanks very much for all your support and solidarity. I'm convinced that we are going to win this dispute.
Thanks, Andy. I think you've set the scene really well there, and lots of support we can see coming on screen for the dispute, for the ballot. So, I mean, appreciate everyone who's let us know where you're watching from. Let us know, that you're behind the union. It is a massive boost to our members. A couple of interesting comments I'm going to kick off with if I can. Sean here, you can see him on my screen next to me, Andy. Sean says, another dispute just accept the job's changing and get on with it, or get yourself a job in Tesco's. So that's one end of the spectrum. And then we have Stacey Pierre, who says, forget the ballot, let's just strike. So I think that's the sort of the measure of, I suppose, what you're juggling as the national officer. You've got some people who are saying, I'm not in that place. Some people are saying, this isn't strong enough for us. Let's get out now. And how are you going to take all the members to the right place at the right time? Because that's crucial in any ballot, isn't it?
Okay, so did you say it was Stacey forget the ballot?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Stacey, we have to abide by the legislation and the law, but that doesn't mean that we should be worried about that or concerned, because as a democratic union, we want to take our members with us on this journey, and we're convinced we will. And we fundamentally believe the members will give a ringing endorsement of the strike ballot by voting yes. So actually, I'm excited about the fact that our members are going to get the opportunity to put that cross on the ballot paper and demonstrate their anger and frustration against the employer. So we've got nothing to fear from the ballot. I'm convinced that the members are up for this. In terms of whoever said the job's changing, get on with it and go and work for one of the supermarkets. Well, look, it's nothing to do with the job changing. The post office will declare a profit for the last financial year, 2020/21. So at the end of March 21, they were in a healthy position with profits. So that those profits, and let's not lose sight, those profits have been made by our members for the post office. Not been the bosses in their ivory towers making those profits. They've been made by the people on the coalface at the sharp end, serving the customers day in, day out, moving the money around to keep post offices open, doing the administration that's so vitally important to keep the show on the road. So, that profit, we deserve our share of that profit. The other point here is, and this is a staggering figure, in less than a year, the post office have got from government nearly £1.2 billion worth of subsidy. I'll repeat that number. £1.2 billion worth of subsidy has been given by government to the post office. Now, where's that money going? It's going on legal fees. It's going on paying compensation to postmasters who quite rightly deserve compensation after the appalling way they have been treated. So it's not about the job changing. Our members embrace change. Our members do the job to the best of their ability. What they need, though, is a decent reward and a decent pay rise. And let's look at what's changing in society. Gas, electricity, utility bills are going up by over 50%. That's what's changing. It's not the job that's changing. It's the quality of people's lives that are changing. And our members deserve a much better deal. So, our members don't need to go and work for Asda or Tesco's. Our members want to work for the post office, but they want to be properly paid for doing so.
Brilliant, Andy. One of the, you just set out there, in some detail, the sort of lengths our members have been through to keep the service going during the pandemic, and some really, really difficult times, obviously identified early on as key workers. And Lynn makes the point, she's made a few posts, and a few people have said this. Lynn says, we're all worn out. And I wonder, what your message be to, members as we sort of get the machine rolling and we land ballot papers on their doorstep and we say to them, look, we might have to take strike action. How do we get to those people who are just saying, do you know what, I'm absolutely exhausted. I want to tap out. I don't know how to keep going in this. So what's your message to Lynn and other people that might be feeling basically saying, I don't know if I can do this?
I understand that some of our members might have ballot fatigue and might be worn out through having to have confrontation with the post office, because we've done this many times in recent years. We've had to keep on going back to the membership and ballot. There has been occasions, though, when we have delivered massive yes votes and we've ended up getting a deal without having to take strike action, because the post office have realised they can't continue with their ill-conceived policies, and they've got round the bargaining table because of the strength of the yes vote and done a deal. So look, our objective, first and foremost, is to reach an agreement. We want to negotiate agreement. It has to be an agreement that's fair and reasonable, and one that we can recommend to our members as being good, that takes them forward and improves their quality of life. So, I understand about being worn out, but, you've gone through 2 years of dire situation, times that none of us have ever experienced. And frankly, all of our members deserve respect and dignity. They've done a sterling, magnificent job. And so if it was about affordability, then that might be a different argument. But the post office can afford it, And the reality is you all deserve much, much better. So look, the fight back starts here. When you get that ballot paper and you vote yes, you're fighting back. And you need to feel good about that, because you need to be able to show resistance and stand up to these people. These people don't even want to give us the crumbs off the table. They are the masters. They believe that they can treat you with impunity, and they treat you in a dire way. And when you look at our wages, they're nothing like they used to be relative to the cost of living and what you could do with that in terms of disposable income. This is about having getting a just reward for your efforts and your endeavours, and having a decent, fair quality of life whilst working, and a good pension in retirement.
Thanks, Andy. Fantastic. So moving, if I can, to a question from Laura, who says, I completely support strike action. They're showing us a complete lack of respect and appreciation for all within the post office who have kept the country moving during the pandemic. Me and my colleagues would like to know if there is an agreement or proposal in mind that the union is fighting for. Do we have an offer in mind? Do you have an offer in mind that you would see as acceptable and you'd be willing to put to the members?
Okay, so I agree with Laura about lack of respect. In terms of what would resolve and settle this dispute, I think we need to look at that in the round as to what's going on currently, as well as what should have happened from April last year. So it's a great question, because we're not just talking about a pay deal from April 21, which is what the dispute is about. We've also got to have an eye on what we'd want from April 2022. 11 months has expired of this pay freeze period, and therefore we've got to look back, but we've also got to look forward. And inflation was nowhere near the 7.8% RPI that it is today. That was for January 22, when we submitted our pay claim last April. So we need to be mindful of what inflation looked like last April and May, June, but also be mindful of what inflation is today. Ideally, I'd like to reach a 2-year deal, or possibly even a 3-year deal, but we need to resolve the dispute, which is for the pay freeze, but also look forward as well. So an ideal scenario would be a multiple year pay deal. That means that we wouldn't be in this position, this boat, in a couple of years' time, and that we could have a period of stability and certainty and continuity. We don't like having to do this, but the posters have given us no option, no choices matter. We've got to stand up and defend ourselves and take them on.
Thank you, Andy. Jason White is obviously again behind the dispute, but is saying, what type of action are we thinking about? Are you thinking about balancing it with what's happening out there? Obviously, people are concerned about paying for food, heating, rent, mortgages, etc. Will you be taking that into account if we have to ultimately take strike action following the vote?
Okay, so once we get that massive yes vote, the first thing we would do is we will get in touch with ACAS and see if they can get the post office around the bargaining table to facilitate new talks. We was in ACAS earlier this year in January. Those talks broke down without any offer. It's clear that having a yes vote in your back pocket does empower you to get them to negotiate and to do a better deal. If they're going to be stubborn and unresponsive to that, to the will of the members, then at the same time we will do our utmost to embarrass them through the press and media, drag their name through the press and media. They've got to the brand image and the brand name as a consequence of Horizon is the worst in the UK. They went from being the most trusted brand in the UK to the most corrosive and toxic brand because of the way they treated hundreds and hundreds of people by prosecutions and such like through Horizon. And also we will lobby politically because we're going to leave no stone unturned to put pressure on the post office. So it's not all about strike action. It's about media and press pressure, politicians' pressure, pressure from the likes of ACAS. But if we do have to take strike action, it will be on the auspices of maximum disruption at minimum cost to our members. Now, we haven't actually worked out what that looks like and what that means yet. That'll be the next step once we get the yes vote. So it's one step at a time. Let's not take the yes vote for granted. The ballot closes on Monday, the 28th of March. So it's a month away before we declare the yes vote. We've got ample time to consider what action's necessary. But we will be extremely mindful of the fact that people can't afford to lose money, and therefore we would be very, very sensible and responsible in using that yes vote in a pragmatic way.
Julie's asking, jumping back in there, Andy, Julie's asking if you would consider a sales ban as part of strike action during any dispute with the post office.
So technically you can't do a sales ban with a ballot for strike action. So it has to be a strike ballot for all of our grades. So it's not just the Crown members. We've got admin members that work in payroll, that answer phone calls to customers and postmasters. We've got our people processing the cash in the cash centres, and of course our crew members moving the cash around. So a sales ban would only be one part of the organisation, one part of the movement. We have to think big picture, and we have to think what can unite all of the grades, and where all of the grades together can take action in a concerted way. So, but I mean, look, in terms of a sales ban, I think that the members will make their own decisions and choices on that. But that's not governed by the ballot. The ballot is for strike action.
Thanks, Andy. In terms of the technicalities of the ballot, a couple of people have made the point about the actual ballot papers arriving at the right destination. I know the branches have been going through a really thorough process with the Senior Deputy General Secretary's department, making sure everyone's addresses are up to date. If members, as one member saying that they missed their ballot paper last time, Trevor is also saying how vital it is for people to get their ballot papers. What would you say to people who are unsure whether they've given the union the right address? What should they do right now?
Okay, so we've gone through a vigorous process to do a verification exercise of membership records. We have to do this by law. So we have to do with, the best will in the world, we have to make every necessary endeavour to make sure that we notify the employer of the right people to be balloted, the grades, the workplaces, the numbers in each workplace. And we also have done our best to get people's home and addresses correct. Now, there's a bit of a fallacy out there that many members believe that the post office would automatically notify us of change of address through the payroll. That doesn't happen. They don't have to do that. So we're only as good as the member telling us when they've moved home. If they don't tell us they've moved home, then our records will show the previous address. So I do know for a fact that many of our reps have provided changes of address to our membership records department. They've changed those addresses. So we're in pretty good shape. But is it perfect? No, it will never be perfect. But if somebody doesn't get a ballot paper during the 3-week balloting period, then notify your rep, and then they will send the details through to us, and we will still do our best to make sure you get a duplicate ballot paper.
So thank you, Andy, alongside the ballot, and what we're doing in the workplace and what we're trying to do industrially, there's obviously other campaigning strands and other pressures we try to bring to bear. Mark Hugo from branch secretary at Newcastle and Mao is saying we need to call on all MPs to support our dispute. Without our members putting themselves at risk every day during the pandemic, communities would have suffered further. People need reminding of that. So, political, I suppose, the question is alongside saying to members, your role is to cast a yes vote. Is there what else are the union doing to apply pressure? Yeah,
it's a really good point. Tomorrow, I'm attending what's called an all parliamentary party group of MPs and peers. It meets about monthly, maybe once every 2 months. Marion Fellows MP is the chair of that group, and we know her very well. And interestingly, tomorrow, Nick Reed is also due to attend the group. I'm a member of the group, an invited member on behalf of the CWU. I'm not obviously part of the parliamentary people. So I go to every meeting and invited to make contributions and comments. Tomorrow, we're already planning to get questions posed of Nick Reed as to why there's a dispute pending in the post office. So, we will leave no stone unturned politically to bring pressure to bear on the post office and Nick Reed. Look, I think the last thing Nick Reed wants is further bad publicity and his name appearing in the press and the media. They've had a right kick in, as quite rightly had a good kick in on the horizon, and long may that continue. I think the post office have got this wrong. They just called this wrong. Their tactics or their thought process, their calculations are all up the spout basically, and they fundamentally have got this wrong, and they're going to regret doing what they've done. But Mark's right. We will engage with politicians as often as we need to, and as broadly and widely as we need to as well. No problem with that.
Thanks, Andy. Robert here with a rallying call, if you like, says, Andy, Swansea CVIT 100% behind the yes vote. It's time these people with their fancy job titles in their ivory towers know how we feel, that we don't matter and we bring nothing to the business. We're key workers. We've worked all the way through the pandemic. We deserve a decent pay rise and to be given respect for all the hard work we've done. I think Robert there, I would say, speaking on behalf of your membership very eloquently.
Absolutely.
Aiming for your job, Andy.
Yeah. Look, Swansea's a wonderful city, and their membership are brilliant. They're hardcore. I have never had any doubts about the membership in Swansea CVIT. I'm sure they will lead the way. But the ivory towers is right, and indeed these fancy job titles are right. I mean, every day you see a new post office director with a new job title. They've come from wherever with a fancy CV. But what people don't see is also the revolving doors of the number of managers, directors leaving on big golden handshakes. I shudder to think the amount of money that is squandered with people, with the merry-go-round of people coming and going and taking these big roles and these big jobs. And what do they actually do other than cause mayhem and misery amongst our members?
Yeah, spot on, Andy. Spot on. Great point, Robert. Really well put there, mate, on behalf of yourself and your colleagues. So, going to get into some meaty subjects now with Andy. Got a lot of your questions here on my sort of notepad ready to ask now. A call out to you. Get your questions in. If you've got anything burning, please get them in now, and we'll try and put it to Andy in the second half of the session. Andy, one of the questions that has come through, and I know you set it out a little bit at the start of the show when you gave your opening salvo, is people wanting to know exactly when am I going to get my hands on that ballot paper? When am I going to be able to vote? So could you set out the timetable or your thinking on that?
Yeah, so we were originally planning to serve notice on the employer today. It's 7 days legal notice. A little bit more work needs to be undertaken to make that happen, but we're optimistic we will serve notice tomorrow. And if not tomorrow, by Wednesday at the latest. But we will confirm this to our branches and activists, but we have to give 7 days notice. So if we serve notice tomorrow, then the ballot papers will be dispatched first class post on, I think, Tuesday the 8th of March, which mean that from Wednesday the 9th, Thursday the 10th is when the ballot papers will start landing on the doormat. So, halfway through next week, the ballot papers will start landing. And then members will have till Monday, the 28th of March to return the ballot paper. That means getting the ballot paper in before that weekend. So, Friday, is it the 25th? Friday, the 25th of March will really be, maybe Saturday, the 26th of March will be the absolute last time for getting the ballot paper back in the post. But look, I mean, there's no excuse for any of our members that work in Crown offices to post a ballot paper. You see the postmen and women every day. You're there with the mail bags every day, so it's easy to return a ballot paper. Our biggest enemy with ballots is apathy and people not returning the ballot paper. So this is a real plea to people. Don't leave it to other people. Don't put your ballot paper on the mantelpiece or on the coffee table and leave it there. Please, you open up your ballot paper and return it immediately, because whilst there might be a view that we've got this yes vote in the bag, we can't have complacency and we can't have people thinking it's a done deal already. Every single vote counts. Every single member, we want them to participate and get involved in it. So I'm going to be reminding people of this. We will be doing all of our comms. I appreciate that some people might get a bit fed up with that if they've already voted, but we've got to keep on impressing upon people the need to return their ballot paper, and that's why we've got a 2.5 week window for people to do that.
I mean, on that point, Andy, I mean, one of the questions that, following on from that one from the members is that I had for you was, I mean, if looking back at over a significant period of time, the yes votes and the turnouts in our ballots of post office members have been amongst the bestest unions ever returned. So, we are looking at like a strong and loyal area of CW membership here. Obviously, post 2016, we've had anti-union law, which has changed the game. So previous to that, people would just vote in a ballot, and the yes vote would, if we got a yes vote, you could go on and take strike action. Now we need 50% plus one to vote in the ballot. plus, and we need 50% plus one to vote yes in the ballot. So that threshold does like re-emphasize the need to vote, because actually if we don't get 50% plus one, we can't legally take action, can we?
Absolutely. So just to put this into context, we could deliver a 99.9% yes vote, but if there's only 49% of people voting, then we haven't delivered on the thresholds. So there's two gateways that we have to get through. We have to deliver a yes vote of those voting. So it has to be 50% plus one ballot paper for voting. But we've also got to get 50% of people that are eligible to voting as well. Now, I'm very, very confident we will deliver the yes vote. The thing that gives me a little bit of sleepless nights is whether we will get the threshold to turnout of 50%, because it's so easy to let somebody else vote for you, or have that apathy. And and people are busy, their lives are busy, they've got a lot of pressures, a lot of things on, and it's easy just to put the ballot paper to one side and forget about it. So we do need a massive turnout. And here's the truth: the bigger the yes vote and the bigger the turnout, the better the prospect of reaching a deal without having to take strike action. What the post office will often do is they will add all the no votes up with any non-members that we got, and we've got, to be fair, we've got very good membership levels, but they will add the no votes, the non-members, and those not voting together, and try and use that as propaganda to say, well, the yes vote's not as tasty or not as good as the union's making out. So they will come out with all of their propaganda. Now, the way to deal with that is, let's get a maximum turnout and a maximum yes vote, and then that will spike their guns and they won't be able to peddle out that nonsense like they have in the past. But as Chris says, we have got a long tradition of post office members voting yes, and voting yes in good numbers. But, that's in the past. I'm now only worried about this ballot, because this is the one that matters.
Thanks, Andy. Really good response to what you're saying now. John saying we need to encourage each other to get that yes vote sent back. Spot on, John. Julie is saying you've got my vote as always. So thank you, Julie. Fantastic from you. Erin is saying that Northern Ireland membership is fully behind the yes vote. That Carol Bowmaker was in Belfast today supporting local members and bring on the ballot. So lots and lots of people really, really behind it. I mean, my next question, which is interesting, was going to be, the company will have their propaganda, their communications through this period. It's a hearts and minds game in a lot of cases, and they'll be coming out. And one of their lines that we've seen is, "We can't afford this." Yeah, and I was just about to put that to you in a question of, can they afford it? And then I saw this brilliant comment from Phil Gower, which says, "How can the company justify spending millions in a court case defending the indefensible, and then say they have no money for their staff? I'm personally sick and tired of these people who run the company. They need to be held accountable." So I think Phil's answered the question. The money's there. Perhaps it's, being used in the wrong place. What would you say, though, to a company who are saying to our members, basically, we cannot afford and we will not be given a decent pay rise this year?
This is a fascinating question, because the behaviours of the post office are unusual on this one at this point in time. But before I go on to the affordability, I just wish to pick up on Erin's point that people in Northern Ireland are behind this. That what this demonstrates is that the CW is once again connecting and uniting the whole of the United Kingdom. It doesn't matter whether you're a counter clerk in Cornwall or in Scotland or in Northern Ireland, or whether you're carrying cash or processing cash in Wales or wherever. Across the length and breadth of the United Kingdom, our members are uniting behind this just cause. And, we're a national union, and we will take this fight to the employer nationally. So it's great to hear from people in Northern Ireland that they're totally on board with this. And people need to realise that you're not on your own. You might be working in small little Crown offices or small depots, but this is across the United Kingdom, and there is solidarity and unity from across the membership. So you're not isolated and alienated on your own. In terms of post office propaganda, actual fact, what's been conspicuous is the absence of post office propaganda on this occasion, and I think it's hardly surprising, because actually, what story have they got to tell? How can they win the hearts and minds? If they try to win the hearts and minds, we would expose them for the fools they are and the lies they peddle. They came out with one comms about 3 weeks ago, and they trotted out two explanations or excuses for the pay freeze. The one was One was called about the commercial reality, but they didn't define what the commercial reality was. They didn't go on to explain what that meant. So they actually haven't said they can't afford to give us a pay rise. And that's fundamental, whether they haven't come out with that excuse about affordability. They've just talked about the commercial realities. Now, I don't know what the commercial realities are, because here's a fact. They still haven't published the report and accounts for 2020-21. We're 11 months into the new financial year, and the report and accounts for the previous financial year haven't been published. So it begs the question, what have they got to hide? Why have they not published the report and accounts? And, you know, I'm convinced that once we do see the report and accounts, we will see the hundreds of thousands of pounds that Nick Reed is earning in pay and bonuses and all the rest of it, along with his henchmen like Al Cameron, the chief finance officer, who was at the acting CEO, who tried to recluse the judge in Horizon when they found money to try and sack the judge, unsuccessfully tried to sack the judge, and got called all the names there was by the Court of Appeal as being, akin to a Victorian mill owners. But so look, they peddled out the commercial reality, and they also used as an excuse the government's pay freeze for public sector workers. Now, the government's pay freeze for public sector workers doesn't apply to the post office, and never did. So throughout all the austerity years, there was never a public sector pay freeze applying in the post office. So these are poor excuses. I could swear about it, but the reality is they're making these excuses up, and they haven't got the courage or the convictions to actually go out and sell that line to our members, because it's complete hogwash. So it's going to be fascinating to see what the post office does in the next week, and whether they try and actually win the hearts and minds. I think they've actually thrown the towel in already and given up on that, but I could be wrong. They might try and engage with the members in the next few days. But up to now, as I repeat, they have been conspicuous by their absence of any comms of any nature. Normally they'd be trying to do the team talk, WTL and such like. They'd be putting videos out there and leaflets and what have you. None of that has gone out there, which actually somewhat makes my job a bit harder, because we'd be in a stronger position to rebut their lies. But they're not peddling their lies at the moment. So it makes you wonder if they actually have given up, and they've realised that they've got this wrong. And
I suppose for us, that's where the point you were making about not being complacent is so critical, isn't it? Because in the absence of like that trigger point of the employer putting things out there which are clearly false, us rebutting that and making things clear, and that emotion in the workplace, will the post office be hoping to prey on people's apathy and like lack of like sort of awareness of the issues? And that's just that just backs up what you were saying, Andy, which is like, you know, we need to drive this amongst colleagues. Julie makes a really good point, actually. She's a question she's got, which is she's asking, you know, in amongst all of this mess, she thinks she's sure that the senior managers won't not be getting their pay rise and won't not be getting their bonuses. What would your take on that be?
Okay, so I mean, let's deal with the junior managers in Unite first. So our pay date is the 1st of April. I think theirs is the 1st of June or 1st of July. So the managers in the depots, the admin managers, the Crown Office managers haven't had a pay rise yet either. And I've been keeping my counterpart in Unite up to speed with our campaign and our policies, and been sharing our communications with him. I'd like to see Unite also take a leaf out of our book and start to ballot their members, because they're in this dispute as well, because they're not getting a pay rise. Now, you know, it may well be that we have to declare our yes vote first and then Unite get in behind us. Fine, that'd be good if they did that. Not holding my breath, but if they do, that'd be fantastic. They're our sister union, and I'd like to think that they would follow our lead. In terms of the senior managers and directors, their snouts will be in the trough as often as they possibly can get it in the trough. There's no doubt about that. When you look at the obscene amounts of money and bonuses that have been paid to people, look, you only got to look at it's something like £7 million Paula Venables took out of her reign as CEO in bonuses and pay, and money in lieu of a pension scheme as well. So, you know, you can bet your bottom dollar Nick Reed will be on equally as much money as Paula Reynolds was, or if not more, and so will hit the rest of his GE, as they call it. So I think the point Julie makes is spot on. The people at the top of the pyramid will look after themselves, and they look after themselves at the expense of the people at the bottom of the pyramid, and that's our members that actually keep the pyramid up and running.
Thanks, Andy. So, I mean, you've identified and you've laid out the time frame for the members. You've also talked about communications that will be coming their way. But could we go into a little bit more detail of, how we're going to use communications, what type of communications we're going to use in the coming weeks to basically get every possible vote we can over the line, every possible yes vote over the line? What can members expect, in terms of more of this, more letters to home addresses, other techniques we've got in mind?
Yeah, so we've now done 3 home mailings. The third one arrived on Saturday for many members, or probably today for the rest. It was posted out on Friday first class. So 3 home mailings. The latest one has a letter about pay from Angela Williams, the group Chief People Officer. That's her job title. I'll repeat it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The Group Chief People Officer. That's a catchy job title. She's wrote to us about pay for 2022, and that she wrote in February, early this month, and that letter's in the home mailing. It doesn't inspire much confidence that they're going to get into pay negotiations for early for 2022. And indeed, the expression I've used is that we're bottom of the pile for pay negotiations, because they've got to get money from government to invest in a replacement to Horizon, and they've got to invest in postmasters. And if there's any money left after all that, we might get something for 2022. So there has been home mailings, and there will be a powerful insert in with the ballot paper. Obviously, these type of communications are vitally important, and this is the first of a few. Mm-hmm. We've got other Facebook Live sessions planned. Dates will be communicated, but we will be doing another session just as the ballot papers land on the doormats next week. In terms of face-to-face engagement, our reps have been out visiting workplaces, engaging with the members. We heard that Carol Bowmaker's been in Northern Ireland today. That's great. And all feedback is that the members, we're pushing at an open door here. And I'm not taking that for granted, but I've asked the reps to provide us with any concerns, any feedback where members may not be on board, and I'm getting nothing back. So, I've got to take that as a positive. We've asked the reps to set up WhatsApp groups. So all reps should have WhatsApp groups. If you're not part of a WhatsApp group, please contact your rep and provide your mobile number to your rep so they can include you in the WhatsApp group. I've asked the reps to only use those WhatsApp groups carefully and not to bombard you with messages all the time. It needs to be used sensibly, but when there's key messages to relay. Our reps have also got directories of email addresses for personal email addresses. We will be doing text messages out to members. We might saying how many days you've got left to vote and so on and so forth. Look, basically, under your leadership, Chris, as our director of communications or head of engagement and communications,
you're giving me a fancy job title, aren't you?
I'm not giving you. I'm not giving you a pay. Reward, yeah. I'm not giving you a pay rise, though. But look, we will do everything possible to connect with members, to engage with members, and we want to get your feedback. We've got the next home mailing will have an email address where we're going to invite people to ask questions. Drop me a line with your concerns or any fears you've got. We will respond to those, and tell people what they're looking to hear, or do even possibly tell them what they're not looking to hear, because we will be truthful throughout. But look, we will engage and connect with members in every single possible way through whatever medium we can do that in today's world.
Thank you, Andy. I think you can see the support online is overwhelming. We've had about 700 or 800 members join us over the course of the session, which is fantastic. Loads and loads of support. So a couple of things from us before I give Andy the chance to deliver a crucial final message to you would be that this session remains on the Facebook page, the YouTube and the Twitter. So please share the links. We're going to put them out via WhatsApp in a moment, but share the links with your colleagues. Make sure as many people as possible watch it. As Andy said, this is the first of many. We've got sessions lined up with the DGSP joining us, the General Secretary joining us, and the whole union getting in behind you, and hopefully the wider trade union movement as well, to show you just how much support you have. So it's vital you engage in our communications, whatever form that they come to you in. So I think it's been a really good first session, Andy. I want to thank you, for your contribution. I think it's been excellent. What I'll just ask you to do is to just give any final thoughts over to the members in these crucial days before we serve notice on the employer.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Chris. Look, I mean, I'm looking at the messages that have been coming up there, and most of them are messages of solidarity and support, not just from post office workers and members, but also across the postal constituency. And there's some telecom members as well that are joining. So, look, I mean, we're a great trade union. We cover the wider communications industries. This is not just about the post office in dispute. We have got support across our union. Our postal executive will be leading on this. We've already got a number of volunteers that have agreed to do gate meetings in the depots and the cash centres, and you'll be hearing about them in the coming days. Look, we're going to leave no stone unturned in taking the campaign to you. But this is one part of the campaign in terms of getting that yes vote. Crucially, it's what happens after that as well that we're thinking about. But we want to get a deal. But we want to get a fair deal, and we believe that the post office can deliver a good deal, but they've got to wake up and smell the coffee and be realistic and be reasonable. They've got the money. They've got the money. I'll just repeat this figure. They got £1.2 billion in subsidy from government in the last year alone. We only need £5 million to get a decent pay rise for last year. So we're not asking for a king's ransom here. We're asking for a reasonable settlement that will give hard-working, decent key workers that worked throughout the pandemic a fair pay rise and help to enhance their pension for the future. That's all we're asking for. It's not unreasonable. We're asking for fairness. We're asking for dignity, and we're asking for our members to be respected by the post office. Thank you in solidarity for all your support.
Thanks, Andy. That's absolutely fantastic. So thanks to you on behalf of all the members who have tuned in and who watch on Catch Up. Thanks from both Andy and myself, to more importantly, to all of you who have taken the time to come on, ask your questions and listen to what Andy's got to say. March is an incredibly busy month for the union. Before we get into March, though, straight after this session, there is an LGBT plus History Month webinar with the Equality Department. Please check out your branch emails for more information of that. Tomorrow, Grow the Union Month starts. So that includes the post office and right across the union. If there's people in your workplace who aren't members, get out there, recruit them. And at 5 o'clock tomorrow night, join us for a live session with the General Secretary, Dave Warden, and Raylis, our head of organising and recruitment. Will be talking to you about that vital campaign. Of course, we've got the post office ballot, which is the #1 priority for the union in the month of March, in delivering that vote and delivering that yes vote. We've got a workers' rally on the Saturday the 19th of March in Blackpool. If you are day off, please speak to your branch, get to Blackpool. The title of that rally is Britain Needs a Pay Rise, and all of our members deserve a pay rise. Post office workers, Royal Mail Group workers, BT workers, every single member we have. So pay is a massive issue for this union. Cost of living is a massive issue for this union, and we're going to be out there fighting. We can only do that if you're with us. So 2 things from us: share the content, ask your colleagues to join the union. And from us, I think that's good night, Andy. Take care.